Thanks to everybody for coming out tonight, and because you've gone to a lot of trouble. It's cold out, it's starting to rain, and you're all hoping I'll talk fast so you can get home and watch Missouri get into the Elite Eight. And I think they will. So to start this evening off, you've just seen a movie that's magnificent entertainment and has become part of American lore. To write a book about Bonnie and Clyde is to enter into great controversy. You know, there's so many theories, so many rumors. And so let's start tonight by laying the worst, most vile, and untrue rumor to rest. I am not the twin brother of Warren Beatty. I give old Warren a lot of credit. He made a heck of a movie. And it's brilliant, and I like watching it. I'm sure you do too. The fact remains that it simply extended the mythology of a story that at its root tells us an awful lot, not just about who two poor kids from West Dallas were, but the way our culture quite often rewrites history to fit what we want to believe, or at a certain time we need to believe. It's true that I didn't intend to write this book. Books are like children. They grow up to be whatever they want to be. You don't have much control over it. My original plan was to write a book called Along the Tall Tale Trail. I was going to drive around America. I was going to go to places, iconic places in our country, or places where people who've become a huge part of our culture were reputed to have done some things that perhaps they hadn't done. And I thought I'd start by going to West Dallas. I live in Fort Worth. Bonnie and Clyde grew up in West Dallas. I figure it's a short drive, and if I didn't really find them interesting, I hadn't wasted my time. After only a couple days, I called my editor at Simon & Schuster, and I said that this has to be a book about Bonnie and Clyde, because I was learning things that staggered me, things that I had never imagined before. I imagine some of you out here tonight are Bonnie and Clyde longtime scholars. We have Jim Spahn, for instance, who's done some wonderful things involving studying the Platte City shootout. We all know Platte City. It's the garden spot just outside Kansas City, where your airport is now located. And it's also where Bonnie and Clyde and their criminal career began to be extinguished. That was the beginning of the end. The thing that I thought needed to be done in this book, there have been, to my knowledge, 27 previous books written about Bonnie and Clyde that come from reputable publishers. There's probably 3 times that many self-published. And I've read everyone I can get my hands on, but very few have context. And by that I mean this. The great historian Stephen Ambrose used to say that he wrote books to answer one question. And that question was, how did they do that? And whether Steve Ambrose was writing about the Transcontinental Railroad or organizing D-Day, the purpose of his books, the thing he wanted to find out was, how was it done? Go Down Together is my 14th book, and in my books, I try to answer a question too, but it's a different one. What I always want to understand is, why did they do that? And that's where context comes in. And in the case of Bonnie and Clyde and the legend that's grown and been refurbished and reshaped, and 75 years after they're dead, it's still going on, it seems to me there's 2 whys to be answered. The first is, why did 2 kids from a terrible slum, who were among the most incompetent thieves that ever pulled a gun and said, "Stick 'em up," who were the antithesis of glamour, why did they choose, quite knowingly, to embark on a life of crime that would bring them fleeting fame, but had to inevitably end with their violent deaths? They knew this was coming. They expected it. Yet they were willing to have this happen. Why? And then the second question, why did America embrace Bonnie and Clyde? Why did they become national icons following in the footsteps, not just of Billy the Kid and Jesse James, but Charles Lindbergh, Babe Ruth, Jack Dempsey? Why did that happen? So there's two parts to the book. If we understand them, if we understand where they came from, maybe we start to understand the rest. Clyde Barrow and Bonnie Parker were products of a place called West Dallas that was a hellhole outside of the city of Dallas. The Dallas power brokers very much wanted to create a city that rivaled San Francisco for great culture. They didn't want riffraff, and riffraff was exactly what Henry Barrow, Clyde's father, was when he arrived in 1922 with his wife Cumie, his three youngest children, Clyde, Elsie, and Marie, looking for work because they'd failed as tenant farmers. The Barrows lived in West Dallas, not just in a slum, but in a tent city that was built in a marshy piece of land just on the west side of the Trinity River. It was pestilential. Adults and children died regularly from all kinds of diseases that they caught. The people who were luckiest lived in tents there. The Barrows couldn't afford a tent. They slept underneath the wagon that they rode in on. Food were sandwiches made, what were called then West Dallas round steak, which means bologna. And when there wasn't bologna, people were fed stale bread. On holidays, children were given oranges. Those were the only Christmas presents the Barrow kids ever got. They were born in a time when a man stayed in the economic level where he was born. If you were born poor white trash, you pretty much stayed there. And Clyde Barrow was an ambitious kid. He was a fine, gifted musician. He played the guitar and the saxophone. His sister Artie used to say that her idea of heaven was listening to Clyde play Melancholy Baby. He quit school when he was 16 and did what kids of his upbringing did. He went to work in a West Dallas factory for $1 a day and realized that was it. He could look across the Trinity River and you'd have those gleaming skyscrapers of Dallas. If he could scare up a dime, he could go to a movie and he could see people wearing fancy clothes and driving beautiful cars. Like every other kid in West Dallas, he wanted to wear Sunday clothes all during the week. Clyde was something of a ladies' man. He liked to date girls. The girls' parents wouldn't let them go out with trash like Clyde. Even other West Dallas families looked down on the Barrows because Henry Barrow was a trash man. The Barrows were the lowest of the low. And that was the life of Clyde Barrow, and he decided that he would supplement his income. First he started stealing chickens, then he graduated to cars. Clyde Barrow was a bumbling bank robber, but that boy could steal a car like nobody's business. In those days, a Ford would cost you $260 brand new. If Clyde could steal one and sell it on the black market, he might make $100. This is in the Depression. That's good money. So there's Clyde Barrow. Bonnie Elizabeth Parker, born in Rowena, Texas, a little West Texas town. Her mother, Emma Parker, is a social climber like you wouldn't believe. I'm sure in Kansas City society there are no ladies who are determined that their families will be the blue-bloodedest of them all. But Emma Parker was going to make that happen, and here's why. Rowena was a farming community. The husbands of all the other ladies who brought their children and husband to the Baptist church every Sunday were farmers. Bonnie's father was a brick mason. The way Emma saw it, that made them royalty, and she raised her little girl to believe that. Bonnie's first mark that she ever made was made when she was 3 years old, when a tent revival meeting came to Rowena, and some of the little children of Rowena were invited on stage to sing their favorite hymns.